are afraid of the consequences of saying the things that we think. And by the way, there can be a distinction between the things that we think and the things that we believe. There are things that you might say out loud, you don't really believe it. So why do you say it? Sometimes it's funny. Please understand there's a distinction between being offensive and being funny. Something can be funny and offensive, but hopefully things aren't funny just because they're offensive. Like those are trolls. I worry about people like that, people who will go online and troll people, piss people off intentionally. And again, just because it's offensive doesn't mean it's not funny, but then again, it's not funny just because it's offensive. But that's not my reputation, is it? It's a very different reputation. Why? Because I talk the way that I talk. I get why it is. Because I act like, I don't even act like it. People just perceive, Sion doesn't care. Really? Is that what you take from the way I behave, the way I talk? Or do you take from the way that I talk that I care deeply and intensely? So much so that I'm willing to say the things that I say without worry about offending you. Because I want you to hear the truth. And even if it's not the truth, at least it's the best I can approximate. It's the most honest thing I can say to you. More than anything, I want to be that person who's always going to tell the truth no matter what, as best as I possibly can. Are you aware that your friends like a fake person? That's the problem. That's the thing that creates the anxiety. That's the thing that creates a lot of the depression, social anxiety, because we become fully aware that the person who our boyfriend or girlfriend loves is not the real us. It's the mask that you're putting forward. So they're in love with a mask. Your family, one of the reasons that we become so attached to our families is because they do see more of the real us. They see the us that we really are, the one that we're growing up to be. And then our friends oftentimes see the person who we want to contour and become. So in other words, when we're away from home, we get to pretend like we are, something completely different. I mean, it even goes so far as I see people who bring backpacks to school with changes of clothing so they can be someone different here than they are in front of their families. Yeah.
I personally disagree with what Chantal said, where it's like a lie. This is on a personal level, is what I do. It's more so different personalities that you have. Like, I'm myself with my friends and my family, but then if I'm gonna go talk to a certain group of people, like say, I don't know, black people, just throwing it out there, you talk a different way to them.
Yeah.
No, I'm not scared. It's like, you say the N-word, you go, hey brother, like that. You're just not, you talk different. Okay?
I like how people are giggling and squirreling. Man, I see it all the time, dude. All the time. Out in the hallways. I mean, I see it in class when I have students who will talk very differently depending on the race or ethnicity of the person they're talking to.
You have to code switch. You gotta switch up who you are when you're talking to a person.
That's actually the term for it, code switching. Yeah, it's a well-established psychological principle. It's code switching.
It's very useful because you're not the same person you are with your friends, and when you're getting a job, having a job interview.
So why not?
Because when you're with your friends, you're a degenerate, but when you're having a job interview, you want to be the most presentable figure of yourself.
Why?
Because you want to get the job.
And why are you a degenerate with your friends?
Because we're all degenerates.
If we were all degenerates, then why would it be problematic to be a degenerate in a job interview?
What's a degenerate? Somebody who doesn't do
A lowlife, a scumbag.
That's everyone? Yeah.
Hasn't got everybody from school.
Most everyone in school.
So why are we not degenerates then in the job interview? If everyone's a degenerate, but the purpose of the job interview.
You have to be professional.
But why?
Because it looks better. It makes you look better.
But if everyone's a degenerate,
The employer expects more out of you. They want you to not be like this. They want you to be professional.
You want to set a good impression.
so what's wrong? It's kind of going in a circle though. What's the problem with being a degenerate then? In other words, if everyone's a degenerate, I mean, if you applied for a job, would you pretend to be from Mars?
No.
Of course not, because because everyone's a human, they can kind of take for granted that everyone's a human. So then why is it that we will pretend to be something completely alien to humanity by being professional?
So the reason, since everyone's degenerates, but you don't want to be a degenerate at a job interview is because since everyone is, they don't want to seem like it, and they want everyone to be better than them, or they want to seem better than everybody else. And they want to they want people to change, but they don't change themselves.
So you think that employers want to hire people who make them feel bad about who they are?
That makes the company look better. Because if you have a company full of people destroying things at like a Walmart, and it's not going to look good for the brand and the company.
I don't understand why not though. In other words, if we're all degenerates, then you saw people being degenerates, it wouldn't bother us because it's just like, it'd be like seeing someone be human. It wouldn't bother us if we just saw people being human. Okay, so we'll pretend to not be the thing that we are so that we can get something out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so in other words, we take on different personalities depending on the thing that we want out of the situation. So you've got these two sides of yourself, and everything that you're saying is true. You've got these two sides of yourself. You've got the persona, which is your personality. In fact, that's the Greek word for mask, your persona. This is the thing that you show the world. And the kinds of things that you show the world are typically like, I don't know, like we're honest, we're brave, let's say. In other words, whatever personality traits you, or we're kind, we're generous, whatever personality traits that you're showing the world. And these are things that typically we show the world because we want to be accepted by the world. And it's strange because most people in the world are not these things, but most people in the world are in fact pretending to be these things. And so it's almost like we're at this masquerade party where as long as we're all wearing the same mask, we all get along. Even though we can look at each other and say, I know you're wearing a mask though. But as long as we're still wearing the same mask, we feel like we're connected to them. I mean, this is kind of like the mask that I'm talking about over here with regards to the thing that we're all pretending to be like. So in your social group, it might be I'm pretending to be like, some well-known internet personality without even saying it. And then since we're all kind of identifying with that person, we have that thing in common. Oh, we're all trying to be like so-and-so, even if it's unspoken. It's kind of like that with the social ideal as well. Did you guys see that?
Say it.
That was good. That's gonna be the highlight. And so there are personality traits here that we're all also tapping into and pretending to be like. And why? Because it does give us the sense of inclusion, but it also creates a problem, which is that there's this part of you that you show the world, and then there's this other deeper part of you that you don't show the world, and that's your shadow. And that's the stuff that you maybe will show some people, but by and large you keep it to yourself. So the part of you that you show the world, it could be, I would caution us to be careful when we say like, oh, you're pretending to be this, or you're pretending to be that. You also might be trying to become that thing. So in other words, you might be trying to become generous, and you might be trying to become, honest and kind, but it's difficult. A lot of times it's difficult. And in fact, what you're going to find is that the more we do this, the more difficult it is to be honest. In other words, what I'm saying is that you can think of your personality, or at least your presence in the world as a pyramid, I guess a pyramid, but like a glacier. Right? So or an iceberg, and we've seen those pictures of the iceberg before, right? Where there's like just part of the iceberg that's above the water, and then there's this much deeper part of the iceberg. It's way bigger, it's way deeper than the rest of it. You can think of your personality this way. There's a part of your personality that you're showing the world. And in actuality, it's just the tip of your personality. It isn't all of you. And that might be the part of you that's generous, or the part of you that's kind. And by the way, this will also depend on the situation in which you grow up. In other words, if you're someone who shows kindness, you might grow up in a family or an environment that doesn't respect kindness, that confuses kindness with weakness. So maybe you don't show kindness. Maybe you show that you're unkind, or you're rough, we might say. and then maybe in actuality though, you're not kind, or you are kind, you follow. In other words, there's this deeper part of you. Now, the part that you don't show the world, that doesn't have to just be the parts of you that are evil and wicked. It could be, like in other words, you might have those intrusive thoughts that pop up into your head over here. It was just like earlier when he said that when you're talking to a black person, you'll talk differently. And some of you were like bristling and giggling at that, but I would bet if I followed you around for a day, I would find you doing that kind of code switching. You're probably doing it, but there's like one person who's willing to admit that they do it, but then there's a whole bunch of people who will clutch our pearls and be like, I can't believe you do that. There's the tip of your personality, that's your persona, the part that you show the world, and then there are those other parts of the world that you don't show. Now you might be very aware of them, and again, it can be like intrusive thoughts, or it can be the kinds of things that you're talking about. It can also just be something like everyone has, like your insecurities, maybe. It can be like your fears that you have. It can be all kinds of stuff, but these are just the things that you don't want to show the world for some reason. Now, it creates this dilemma, going back to what Chantal was saying, that, so let's say that you do have friends, and your friends like you. You are fully aware, well, sorry, not maybe directly aware, but you could be unconsciously aware that who your friends really like is only part of you. And it's the part of you that's not really you. And so, like if you have like a significant other and they love you, they don't really love you maybe. They love this thing that you're showing them. They love this part, and by the way, it gets even more complicated when the part that you're showing them might not even be what you're showing them. Meaning that if you're in love with somebody, then you start to forgive all kinds of things. Like they have like that really annoying giggle, but you think it's cute. Or you'll make all kinds of excuses for them. Well, they don't, they're not dependable, but they're just really busy. That's all it is. Yeah, they're just busy. But I'm a priority in their life. They don't message you back. And it's like, oh, they probably fell asleep. In other words, love will cover a multitude of sins, and if you're in love with somebody, you might not even be seeing what it is that they're presenting, because you just really want to believe the best in them. And then maybe something happens in life that you discover a little something about them that's in that shadow region. Now you got a choice to figure out, because you've discovered something that we should have known intuitively, which is that there's a deeper shadow than just this persona that I'm seeing. And then you should wonder what else is down here that I'm not seeing, because everybody has these things. So now, if this is you, you're living in this perpetual fear, even if it's just an unconscious fear, that you're going to be found out. What if people knew about those intrusive thoughts that I have? What if people knew about my depression? What if people knew about all of this? I wonder if they would still like me. I wonder if they would still admire me. I wonder if they would still love me. And the irony, of course, is that is exactly the thing that people will love about you. Of course you'll have people who will talk crap about it. Like I said, you describe some experience that probably 90% of the population has, or you describe having feelings that almost everybody has. But for some reason when we articulate it, we think, oh my God, people are going to think I'm weird. They're going to say that they think you're weird because it's a deflection. They're feeling it also, but they don't want anybody else to know. Oh my God, you're depressed? Wow, what's wrong with you? Meanwhile, they go home and sit in their closet or whatever, or they struggle through it differently. But as soon as we find out that someone feels a certain way, like that, depressed, anxious, or whatever, and then we accept them for that, that's how people start to come together. That's how actual, real, intimate love happens. We get further and further down into this shadow, and then we're accepted anyway. Now, there's a limit, of course. Like if you get down deep in the shadow and the person finally tells you, I'm a serial killer, I feel like I should tell you, that might be a little too far. In other words, for some people. And some people will like the idea. Like there actually was a couple, I can't remember their names, I can see their pictures in my head though, back in the 80s of a guy who was a murderer, and he married a woman, and then she found out, and she was like, that's so interesting, I've always wanted to do that myself. So then they started murdering people as a couple. Yeah, and what's funny was that together they didn't get very far, and then they got caught, and then she testified against him. But before that, he killed a few people. He'd been doing okay by himself, but as soon as the team got bigger, then he got caught. They got caught.
The relationship got in the way.
Yeah. And then of course it begs the question of what was the relationship then in the first place. And so the further down into this shadow that you can go and still be accepted, that's where real intimacy happens, because it's like, wow, this person knows about all of these things that I get, and they still accept me. And then of course the person that you're telling it to is like, wow, I know this person on a far deeper level than anybody else. And then it's almost like a little secret thing that you have. Like, I know who this person really is. Yeah? And not just the persona that they show the world, not just the mask that they see, not just the world's impressions, but I know who this person really is. And then you're accepted and loved anyway. That's a huge deal. More directly from what Wilde is saying here, released ourselves when we talk in our own person. We are afraid of the consequences of saying the things that we think. And by the way, there can be a distinction between the things that we think and the things that we believe. There are things that you might say out loud, you don't really believe it. So why do you say it? Sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's like jokes. Maybe you don't necessarily believe a joke, but you say it because it's funny. Please understand there's a distinction between being offensive and being funny. Something can be funny and offensive, but hopefully things aren't funny just because they're offensive. Like, those are trolls. I worry about people like that, people who will go online and troll people, piss people off intentionally, and the whole joy they get out of it is that they piss people off. Like, you just enjoy making people's days worse. But yeah, because it's funny. Yeah, but why is it that destruction is funny to you? And again, just because it's offensive doesn't mean it's not funny. But then again, it's not funny just because it's offensive. Yeah.
So I took that first part in a different way. When we're talking to ourselves, we're saying things to ourselves that we wouldn't say normally, like the intrusive thoughts. We wouldn't have these thoughts normally, but they're there. But we don't let them be known. And so when we talk to ourselves, it's more so the person that we're trying to be, or trying not to be, rather than the person that we are.
Yeah. And that's how oftentimes we'll reject people. We'll go out of our way for example, I walked in here and said, that was weird. So last night I was thinking about killing myself, and then there was this moth in my house, and I go and tell a story about the moth. Many of you might be like, oh, what the hell's wrong with him? What did he just say? What the hell's wrong with him? I wonder how many of you were thinking that last night or the night before last. And that doesn't mean you're sitting there planning and writing out notes, but I wonder how many of you have had that thought pop into your head at some point. But then instead of accepting that part about ourselves, we further bury it. There's something wrong with you if you've had that thought before. I can't believe Scanlon would have said that. This is a terrible thought to have. I told you, he's not right in the head. In other words, we go overboard trying to criticize people. Oftentimes, criticism is the highest form of autobiography. Sometimes I can tell what terrible things people are into by the level of criticism that they level against it. If you're like I say, if you're someone who says, I would never, get ready, man. We were joking about that before class today with the heroin. Yeah, and I jokingly said, get ready to do it. Because I would never do this one thing. I don't know, maybe. Or maybe it's an overreaction on your part because you know that you actually are tempted to do that thing. And that doesn't mean that every time you criticize something that therefore it's a shadow desire of yours. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that could be, maybe that's why we reject it so hard, because we hate that thing inside of ourselves. Think about how often we criticize people. They're just they just want to fit in. They won't even be themselves. They're trying so hard to just get loved by everybody. Don't you hate it when people do that? Hey, look at my selfie. We're trying so hard ourselves to fit in. So and what do we do to fit in? We criticize people who try to fit in, because you're not supposed to try to fit in. So we're fitting in by criticizing people who try to fit in. And it's this weird circular paradox. And there's a fear, of course, at some point we're going to be found out. Think about that one terrible thing that you think frequently, or that you've done, or that interest or desire that you have. And imagine if people found out about that. Now, the one person in your life, if there is one person in your life who you can tell it to and feel like you're not going to be cast aside, that's a real tight relationship. But man, what if they turn on you? What if they use it against you later? I wonder if any of you have ever done that. Like you've shared something with somebody, and then they just and then they use it against you later. You know, and then we fold our arms and scratch our chins. And we're like, never again. I'll never let someone get that close again.
The quote was about last class.
Diogenes? Yeah.
Could be like, you're the guy that masturbates in public. And?
Yeah, exactly. What do you do to them now? You know the worst things about the person. It's like, well, I can hold that against you. Go ahead.
You can't blackmail him.
You can't blackmail that person.
Because he doesn't care.
Yeah, he just didn't care. And if you don't care about your reputation, even more. Now, not in the sense of like, I just don't care, but you have to realize you can't control your reputation. Like, I have a reputation for being a complete asshole. I know this. I've heard this many, many, many times over all of the years. And yet, I challenge you. Find somebody who's ever asked me for a favor, and I've just turned them away. Find them. Find somebody from past years who I've had before, or anybody who's even interacted in the school before. Find somebody who's ever apologized, who's done something wrong, who's done something terrible, and apologized, and I've said, I don't care about your apology. Get out of here. Find that person who I haven't accepted an apology from, and find the person who I've wronged and told me that I did them wrong and they were upset with me, and I didn't apologize to them. Find that person too. And then while you're at it, find the person who I've rejected helping out and doing favors for. But that's not my reputation, is it? It's a very different reputation. Why? Because I talk the way that I talk. I get why it is. Because I act like, I don't even act like it. People just perceive, this guy doesn't care. Really? Is that what you take from the way I behave, the way I talk? Or do you take from the way that I talk that I care deeply and intensely? So much so that I'm willing to say the things that I say without worry about offending you. Because I want you to hear the truth. And even if it's not the truth, at least it's the best I can approximate. It's the most honest thing I can say to you. And maybe my sense is like, I want you to have somebody, more than anything, I want to be that person who's always going to tell the truth no matter what, as best as I possibly can. One thing that you guys can't ever say about me is Scanlon's a liar. There's one thing you can't say. But although I will tell you guys stories in class and people will say, I don't believe that story. That didn't happen. Every story I tell you happened. Everything I tell you happened. It's true. I don't have to lie to you. I can just tell you the truth. People don't believe the truth as it is. But there's really nothing that would be impeachable about me. That's why I was joking. I was asked that question last time. What could you hear about me? And if you asked me if I did something or said something, I would tell you. Yeah, I did do that. That's right. I forgot I did do that. Yeah, I've done that before. If you ask me a question, it's kind of, have you ever? I'll tell you the truth. Or I won't answer you. If it's something I don't want to answer, I'll just say, I don't want to answer that. I don't want to talk about that. Which, by the way, is oftentimes a pretty good indicator as it is. Yeah. It's usually a yes with an asterisk, with a caveat. It's like, yeah, but let me explain.
Yeah, but hear me out.
Exactly, but hear me out. And so now, so I don't go to sleep at night ever wondering, like, is someone going to find out something about me? No, the only reason you don't know something about me is because it hasn't come up in conversation. But that's, by the way, very hard, because that also means I will never be president. I will never be a senator.
You will.
No.
We will all vote for you.
Which would be interesting. No, don't. I told you, do not vote for me. If I ever run for anything, do not vote for me.
So we're gonna vote for
No.
you.
Because I'm telling you, I'm running for the wrong reasons, dude. I'll be running for the wrong reasons. Because I'm telling you, dude, I'm telling you what the shadow is. And by the way, people, if you tell them what your shadow is, they just might not believe it. That's why I have intense admiration for people who have the courage to show their shadows. Because not only are you willing to show things that other people aren't willing to show, but moreover, you're willing to stand in judgment of it and to overcome that judgment of it. Because now you don't have to worry about anything. And by the way, you become so much stronger afterwards. You can't be blackmailed. You can't be frightened into things. And by the way, even if people can say things about you that aren't even true, and it won't even affect you the same way. So, because we kind of know the truth. Because now, if you're a person who establishes themselves as a truth teller, and I ask you, is it true that you beat your husband? And you were like, no, I've never done that before. I have good reason to believe you. Because if you did, if you're the kind of person who would say, yeah, I've done that, I shouldn't have done it, but yeah, I did it. Now I know that you're a person who wouldn't tell the truth, no matter how embarrassing it is. But that makes you so incredibly strong. You don't have that anxiety anymore. You know exactly who you are, even if they don't believe it, even if they don't accept it. But that's on them, you can't control that. What you can control is what you do and what you say and how you behave and operate in the world. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?